to everyone from around the world who's joined us to hear a young, passionate Jordan. As Dr. Naddaf mentioned, she's just 17 years old, a 12th grader based in New York City, who's currently attending the New York Design High School. And she is the co-founder and CEO of a non-for-profit called Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative. It's an organization that aims to highlight youth voices in global issues and bridge the gap between politicians and teens across the social spectrum. She's also on the board of XPRIZE Connect Advisory, has tremendous amount of experience in advising teens, and herself is a teen CEO and student, championing educational initiatives in the US and abroad on some very important topics. So with that, Jordan, I hand it over to you to explain to the audience and us a little bit more about yourself, how you got involved with this organization, and your passion behind the project. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here today. I'm so happy to talk to you all. As mentioned, I'm Jordan. I'm 17. I'm based out of New York City, and I am a co-founder and co-CEO for the Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative, or FPYC for short. I want to talk to you guys about what we do at FPYC and what I've learned as a teen CEO, and I really want to highlight the importance of youth involvement in tackling big world issues and how important it is that youth have a voice and the magnitude of change that youth can bring about. So my co-CEO, Mayan Barsaid, and I actually first crossed paths at a summer study abroad program at Oxford. This was 2 summers ago, and we never met. We were there at the same exact time, same program. We never crossed paths. And then a year later, we actually had the chance to speak to each other at another summer program in Brussels, Belgium. And we were both there studying world government. So we were focusing on international issues and international organizations like the UN or other organizations like the EU, essentially forming a coalition, a collaboration of many different countries and a lot of different representation. So we learned a lot in the classroom, but we also had the chance to venture out into the foreign policy world. We met with European Parliament members, United Nations leaders, and other nonprofits like Amnesty International. After meeting these people, we realized that we were really passionate about foreign policy issues, and this inspired us to create our first draft of FPYC. At this point, we called it Get Ready. This was supposed to stand for 2 things. Get ready to talk about it, and talk about issues, and it also stood for Get Ready for the 2020 election. So when we first started this project, we were thinking on a smaller scale. We just wanted to create something focusing on educating teens about foreign policy issues in the short run. And so we were aiming to gear up to the 2020 election and really be pioneering this movement of educating teens, leading a big event. And then we realized that it wasn't really what we wanted to do. So we wanted to create a mini think tank filled with dozens and hundreds of teenagers who have lots of different ideas, lots of different opinions on current international events. And so on June 29th, we parted ways in Brussels. We all went to our own corners of the world, and we didn't talk to each other for like a month and a half. And then one day, someone sent a message in our group chat, and we all started remembering how passionate we were and how much we wanted to bring about change in the world. And so about 14 or 15 of the original 23 members decided to stick around and see, what can we do with this? What can we do with our idea, without all of the change that we want to bring? What can we create that has tangible results, things that we can actually see making a difference in teenagers' lives? So at this point, we didn't really have a hierarchy structure. All 14 or 15 of us were directors. We all had an equal say. And as you can imagine, it was a little bit of a disaster. We were so passionate. We were all leader type personalities. And so there was a lot of clashing. We didn't get along super well. And the one thing that continued to unite us, the only reason we were able to stick together, is because all of us at our core just had this passion to make a difference. and to educate teens about foreign policy. So we sent out a couple of hundred emails announcing that Get Ready was launching. But the titles, the subjects of the emails sounded just like clickbait. It was like, Get Ready is here. Click here to learn more about Get Ready. And so we realized this, we were a little bit horrified, and we realized we have to change this. This cannot be the brand that we're projecting, the brand that we're representing. So we started a really long process over the next couple of weeks. We debated on different names, we debated on different mission statements, and finally we settled on the Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative. And this is just 2 or 3 weeks later, we send another email out to the same 200 people telling them, hey, we've rebranded, come check out our new website. Now we're the Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative. So we thought that after we rebranded and sent out all these emails, after we created a more professional image of ourselves, everything was just going to take off immediately. We thought people were going to be super eager to work with us. We thought we'd come up with something really unique because we had searched all of the competitors and to see who else was out there doing what we're trying to do. And we realized that no one's really trying to do what our goal is. No one is creating a youth-led organization to get teens into foreign policy. It's all colleges and adults and senior citizens who are trying to create a movement to get the youth involved, but they don't know what we're interested in. They don't know what captures our attention. So we thought, who better than other teenagers to get teens involved, because we think the same way, we like the same things, we know exactly what gets us interested. So we launched in August. We just kept on producing minimal content through September. And then the month of October arrived. This was one of the most stressful months of my life to this day. We had decided that we were going to hold a launch event in November at the University of Pennsylvania. So we were holding it at a renowned foreign policy institution, the Perry World House, which is a foreign policy think tank. And we had a month to put together this event. I was a full-time student. I still am a full-time student. And I was at an early college program last year. I used to live in California. And so I was in California. My co-CEO, Mayan, was in Philadelphia. So we had a 3-hour time difference. And we were just trying to coordinate with each other to get together to have calls. And so I ended up constantly stepping out of class to take these calls and telling my teachers, I'm so sorry, but this is happening right now. I have to go. I have to be a part of this. And we had a lot of difficult conversations. We kept asking ourselves if this is something that's worth all of the gray hairs, that's worth all of this uncertainty, not knowing how many people were going to show up, not knowing if we were going to be able to have enough people to fill up half of the room even. Is anyone going to be interested? Is anyone going to donate? How are we going to get the money and the resources to put on this event? I'm so glad that we pushed through, because when I think back on my fondest memories, our launch event is definitely one of my favorite memories over the past few years. We had our first event. We were surrounded by friends and family and supporters. We flew in a media company from Vancouver, who are one of our partners, called Human Biography. And we hosted Anusha Ansari, who is the first Iranian woman in space, as our keynote speaker. And that we had created something real, something that could make a difference in other people's lives. Some of the key players that were there were Galen Miller, who is now one of our co-COOs, and Olamide Babayeju, who's one of our CFOs. And they were here at this event with me and Mayan and a couple of other people, and it was just a blast. It was amazing. It was a super successful night. The foreign policy world knew who we were and that we were here to stay. So over the next few months, we continued to build partnerships with companies like Human Biography, International Policy Digest, which is a magazine that publishes foreign policy opinions, as well as TurnUp, which is an app that activists can use to connect with other organizations who are trying to do what they want to do. It connects the people with the resources they need to make a difference in the world, which was very similar to what we were trying to do, except for we are also trying to educate teens and we're focused on foreign policy, whereas TurnUp encompasses a wide variety of issues. So we also established a formal leadership structure. This placed Mayan and I as co-CEOs, And things became so much more efficient. In February, we were able to open up our applications to the public. At this point, we had about 12 people working on FPYC, and we decided, you know, we're doing a lot, we're trying to do even more, and we just don't have enough people to make this happen. We need a bigger team. So by June, we had 30 members, which was more than double our original size. But the biggest surprise was waiting for us on June 18th. So we use TikTok, a platform that you've all probably heard of, to advertise our organization and to convey foreign policy education. And then on June 18th, one of the TikToks that our marketing team had made, Friskita Sejdu, who used to be one of our marketing directors, her TikTok went viral. So we got over 30,000 views in the next couple of days, and applications started flooding in from all over the world. More than 250 people applied in that week alone. We were ecstatic. We were so excited. Finally, what we had been waiting for all these months, what we had been fighting for, was happening. And all of these people were interested in reading our content and getting involved with foreign policy and having conversations with each other. And at the end of the day, that's what motivates us the most, is seeing teens get excited about foreign policy, seeing teens get excited about what we're creating and what we're doing. That's what drives us to keep going, even when things get a little bit difficult. So we opened our applications again in August, and once again, we had international applicants. And so now we have about 220 people who are teen staff members internationally. So our staff members consist of teenagers from the ages of 13 through 19 in order to preserve the integrity of our For Teens by Teens initiative, and in order to make sure that we're still effectively targeting the youth. So our marketing team continues to advertise on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. We currently engage with teens through Instagram stories and polls on these stories. And the team also puts together short informative posts about major global events, which is another way we roll out our educational content, just to get people to have quick snapshots of what's going on in the world. Meanwhile, Galen Miller, our content director at the time, he's now one of our COOs, he was building the content department up from scratch. So content production used to be the main thing that we produced. It was the core of our education initiative, and it still is, but it was spread very inconsistently between members of the organization. So instead of having a dedicated content team, we had members from social media and members from outreach, and we had a rotating system where everyone had a turn where they had to write about an issue that they were passionate about. And our op-eds are opinion pieces. They can represent the author's worldview, but they do not represent FPYC's opinion on global issues. We're a nonpartisan organization. We don't have any political affiliations. So what we needed was a content team that was dedicated to consistent quality writing, which would give us the ability and the resources to diversify our content production. We got our first couple of members, and then after our TikTok went viral, we ended up with 52 content producers who were spread out across 6 time zones internationally. And they had 2 task forces, 6 cohorts, and a leadership team. And every week we were producing more than 10,000 words of writing, hours of podcast materials, and countless special projects. The growth of the independent content department turned us into a powerhouse of original youth-produced writing. And now we have our 2 new content directors, Catherine Curtin and Kate Barrett, who lead our content team, which is currently more than 65 people. So we're so excited to have the manpower to produce all of this educational content to get teens reading about foreign policy issues, but not in a New York Times article, not the SF Chronicle, something that other teenagers have written, because it's a more relatable voice. It's something that captures the attention of other teenagers more easily. So we have an outreach team who works really hard to create connections with influential people, companies, and other initiatives. And they also design and spearhead most of our initiatives and events. So curating partnerships with other youth-led organizations is one of our current focuses. We want to create a coalition of youth-led, nonpartisan organizations to combat the typically toxic environment that consumes youth activism. We believe very strongly in building each other up rather than competing for the spotlight in activism. All of our energy should be focused on creating a better world, not getting more press or more prestigious opportunities than our rival organization. We wanted to eliminate these rivalries entirely and build opportunities for collaboration. We also use our partnerships to take care of aspects of our mission that we don't really have the bandwidth to do. As an organization of 220 teens, we don't really have the resources to get technology or other very basic resources to underprivileged areas of the world, to underprivileged children. And so we focus on accomplishing these goals through partnerships with other organizations who are trying to do this. And we promote our content on their platforms, on their devices, so that we're reaching truly every teenager who is physically able to engage with our content. We want them listening. We want them participating. We also have an ambassador team, which pioneers clubs at high schools. So they create a monthly curriculum to engage members of the club in discussions about foreign policy. We call these members FPYC ambassadors, and they have the chance to write pieces for our website. So this past month, a student named Sylvia published a piece about the coronavirus pandemic and healthcare as a human right. And so we don't draw boundaries on what you can write about as long as it's related to foreign policy in one way or another. And foreign policy is such a wide umbrella. It encompasses so many issues. It's very easy to find something that is under the umbrella of foreign policy. We don't limit what our writers are writing about. We try to balance our content, of course, but if you're passionate about it, we want to hear about it. We're never going to censor anything other than hate speech or discriminatory language, obviously for safety reasons and to make sure that we're creating a positive space rather than a negative one. But we never censor the opinions of our writers. So our website managers are the gears behind the complex machine of FPYC. Without them, nothing would come of the work we do. They're a seriously underestimated department. They're consistently updating the website and uploading the works of other teams. And they work very closely with our graphic design team to maintain a carefully curated brand that represents our ambitions and the image that we want to project to the world. Our graphic design team is another underappreciated team. Without them, all of our content would be very bland and unappealing. If you go to our website, which is fpyouthcollab.org, you'll see that all of the categories of op-eds have graphics accompanying them. And we're currently working on making graphics for every single op-ed. And these are not just pictures that we pull from the internet or pictures that you take on an iPhone. These are complex infographics or layered collages that really represent the idea that we're trying to project. Finally, we have our international team who focuses on engaging students who find it difficult to collaborate with FPYC because of the different time zones that they're located in. So it's hard for students in Asia and in Europe to work with our team members in the US, and that's how we originally had it. We had everyone collaborating, and now we've sort of branched off and created a unique international branch to make it easier for these students to get involved. Our international director and other COO, her name is Lottie Schrama. She's based in Amsterdam, and we're projecting to eventually hold an international launch event in Amsterdam. But currently our resources to do so are limited because of the COVID pandemic. So throughout this whole process of establishing all of these different departments, of rolling out this new content, there were still nights that I would call my aunt, and there were still nights that she would call me, and we would ask each other, is this worth it? Should we just quit? But we kept going, and we would soon realize that none of our ideas and none of our goals were too big to achieve. We could create an unstoppable force of youth powered and fired up to create substantial change in the world, to target foreign policy issues that generally ignore youth voices. Domestic policy issues have become a lot more inclusive of youth voices recently, but youth are very much ignored. Teens are very ignored when it comes to foreign policy, international issues. So I want to talk a little bit about our nonprofit story. So creating a nonprofit is something very inaccessible to teens. It's a very hard process. It's something that's very difficult to do, and there aren't many resources existing on how a teen can create a nonprofit. This is something that me and Mayan are very passionate about, separate from our role as CEOs. We really want to make sure that teens are able to access the resources they need to create a nonprofit. And we have teenagers every day who reach out to me and Mayan over social media or email or LinkedIn, asking us for help, asking us for guidance to how to do this. And that's made us realize just how inaccessible this is and just how difficult it can be. And so things didn't come easy when we were trying to become a nonprofit. When we were planning our launch event, we had friends and family who were donating their time and their resources to help us have the event. But we realized that we needed a bank account. We needed to become a 501c3 nonprofit. We needed our own independent financial status in order to keep going and in order to keep having these events. We made so many mistakes. We filed 4 times before we were finally accepted as a nonprofit. It was a journey. First, we had a wrong mission statement. Then we had to change the title of our organization and add association to the end of it in legal terms. Then we realized that we had been filing for a for-profit corporation instead of a nonprofit one. So throughout this process, we got a lot of help from some of the members of FPYC whose parents had legal experience. And we eventually established our own legal representation, which helped guide us now. And honestly, it's just so difficult to start a 501c3 without this legal assistance, especially when you're a teenager, because there are so many places where you need someone who's above 18 to sign this document or be the president of this or the secretary of this other thing. And so it's another big issue that I hope to have a real impact in. I hope to target this in my own life, separate from FPYC. I really want to help combat this issue and get more teen voices heard in an efficient way, no matter what their interest is. It doesn't have to be foreign policy. Whatever they're interested in, I want to create the resources that they need in order to get involved. So once we became an official nonprofit and we got our 501c3 status in September, we've been accepting donations and we've been taking advantage of the full benefits that come with being a nonprofit. So this means that a lot of organizations offer us lower deals on their resources, on their platforms. Different technologies that our team needs in order to function are available at very discounted rates. So at the end of the day, even though this was very, very difficult to do, we're so happy that we just kept on pushing. The main thing that I want to convey to you today is the power that youth can have when they tackle world issues and global issues. We have the capability of bringing large-scale change across the world, but a lot of times there's just this disparity of resources that are available to us in order to do so. And it's so important for adults who have their voices being heard to include youth in the decisions that are being made and create pathways for youth to get involved. So right now, our website gets tens of thousands of views a month. Our social media is building up to several thousand followers. And you know, this is a testament to what just 12 teenagers who are interested in foreign policy can actually achieve. What 12 teenagers spread out across the US, unable to see each other in person, can come up with when they put their mind to it. So I want to talk about our mission. Our mission is broken up into 3 pieces: education, conversation, and motivation. So for education, we have a couple of different components. We have our content team who writes op-eds, our opinion pieces, editorials, which are longer pieces that typically include collaboration from a few different authors coming together to create one shared perspective. And they provide a lot of background information on big foreign policy issues. And they also produce something that we call an article bias analysis. So this is the dissection of an article that's written by a prevalent news source. And they take apart the article and they examine all of the propaganda and bias that's interwoven into this article. And they help the readers identify this biased language and understand what the article is trying to make them think. We want to teach teens to be able to do this when they're reading big media sources, and to be able to immediately identify, oh, this language is trying to make me believe this, and to be able to think independently of all of that. We also create a weekly podcast. It's called Time Out, Let's Talk Policy. We explore a variety of foreign policy issues. We have obviously informative sections, clips of webinars that we've held, and then we also have some games to get teens actually interested in what we're talking about, rather than just listening to another news publication like NPR or KQED. We want them to feel engaged and involved in what we're doing, and so we have some games integrated into these podcasts. The new episodes come out on Monday, and it's available on any platform that you listen to your podcasts on. So next we have the conversation piece of our mission. So we recently had a webinar series where we hosted activists, authors, and we got an insider's view into their opinions and their activities that they're doing to address foreign policy issues. And this was followed by a Q&A session with the audience to encourage conversation between these influential figures and teens. We also have a forum for website submissions so that teens from across the world who aren't staff members can write about their opinions and have them published on the website. And we have comment sections open under all of our articles, all of our written content, no matter what the written content, what the source of the written content is. Again, we filter for discriminatory language and hate speech, but otherwise opinions are completely uncensored. So we want to encourage teens to start engaging with one another. Our final part of our mission is called motivation. So a big part of our motivation is our partnerships. We want to create these partnerships that help teens get involved in their own communities, get the resources to them that we can't get to them. So if that's technology that they need in order to organize voter registration or organize a protest, we partner with other organizations who can help them do this. And we connect them with those resources. And then in the next couple of weeks, we'll be launching our first debate. So this is an online debate series that will motivate teens to discuss foreign policy with each other and give them an opportunity to talk to each other from across the world even. So our virtual debate will feature teens and give them the opportunity to work together and to collaborate and to just have a conversation. We also recently launched our ambassador program, which I talked about earlier. These FPYC ambassadors are currently all at Masterman High School in Philadelphia. It's our pilot chapter. They have opportunities for guest speakers, activities, and submissions, like Sylvia's submission on coronavirus and healthcare as a basic human right. Another thing that we're super excited to announce is we recently launched our Global Youth Action Coalition, or GYAC. This is an alliance between several youth-led nonpartisan organizations aiming to combat the toxicity in youth activism and create a collaborative, constructive environment to support one another's missions. The environment of toxicity between different activist groups is something that's very common and very prevalent, especially in the climate movement. And when we were just getting started, we realized this, and we knew that, you know, whatever happens, we can't become one of those organizations that's so focused on getting back at each other and taking a step above the other that we lose sight of our own mission and what we actually want to accomplish. One thing that Mayan and I always tell new members of FPYC is that teens have to continue to dream big and to think big in order to accomplish big things. When you do something, you have to do it wholeheartedly. You have to put everything you have into it. You have to put your time and your energy and your heart into what you're doing. And I learned a lot of things along the way. And I just want to share a little bit about what I've personally learned from running an organization as a teen. So I learned that you're never going to be able to make everyone happy. Leadership is about finding your values, following them, sacrificing your time for the good of the many, and understanding that someone's going to be upset no matter what decision you make. You can't let it affect your decisions, and you also can't let it affect your personal happiness. You have to be able to draw those boundaries between work and your personal life. In a crisis, patience is an extremely valuable skill. When things start falling apart, you can't make impulsive decisions or judgments to try to patch things up. You have to stop and you have to gather all of the facts and keep a clear mind. And you have to find the source of the problem and know exactly what caused it before jumping to fix it. It's so easy to panic. I've totally done it in the past. But over time, I've learned how to keep calm and patient to make sure that we have a holistic view of the issue and are able to efficiently address it. I learned that teens can do anything that they put their mind to. From the very first day, we believed that we could become something incredible that helps teenagers around the world. And look where we are today. We get thousands of weekly views on our website. So, any teens who are listening or any teens in general, we just want to convey the message that you have to keep going. You have to make the best of every situation. And you have to try to make things happen until the very last second. You have to put everything into what you do. You have to absorb your setbacks and then start again. Encourage the people around you, because there's going to be moments when you stop and you think that you just have to quit and it's not going to work out. And there's always going to be one person who still has hope regarding the initiative, hope regarding your project, and that person has the responsibility to talk to everyone else and get them excited and remind them why you're doing this in the first place. When I first started working, I needed to find a new way to keep track of my schedule. I was a full-time student, full-time CEO, and I had a personal life as well. I did a musical at my school. I participated in other clubs at my school, and I didn't want FPYC to interfere with everything else that I'm doing. And so I found a calendar app that I liked, and for the first couple of months, our organization secretary worked with Mayan and I to help us keep track of our schedule. And eventually, over time, we're able to do it completely on our own. So I usually have 3 to 4 long meetings a day at the same time as I have school. And so I have to find a way to balance all of these things. And it comes with practice and it comes with time. It's going to be really difficult at first, and then it'll start to feel like instinct. It'll be second nature to separate these two parts of yourself. As for optimism, always believe that the best case scenario will happen, but prepare for the worst. At the very beginning of this, I just kept imagining that we were becoming a big organization that everyone knew. And I kept that image in my mind, no matter what failures, no matter what setbacks we encountered. You have to believe, truly believe, that your dreams will come true if you want them to, and if you want to do a good job. So in the next couple of years, we have some really exciting plans. After the COVID pandemic is over, we have plans to hold a climate conflict summit in New York City. This is projected to be held fall of 2021. It's going to be a one-day event exploring climate change policies in a Model UN style forum. So teens are going to be representing different schools of thought, different identities in the climate change movement, and they're going to have the chance to come together and create mock policies addressing these issues. We have a diplomacy bootcamp, which is going to be a 3-day event in DC. We're thinking it's going to be 16 plus, just because it's an overnight event. So 16 to 19-year-olds are going to come together, and they're going to be 3 days for them to learn how to put together a citizens lobby. And then they're going to get the chance to actually perform the citizens lobby and go to a legislator's office and try to make something real happen, try to affect real change. So these are going to be real policies that they're targeting, real pieces of legislation, real life issues. We're going to be rolling out seasonal exhibits. These are going to be temporary features of art, writing, and other creative content from classrooms around the world, kids of all ages. And we just recruited a new YouTube team who is working really hard right now in training to learn how to put together some short YouTube videos. These are going to be crash courses in foreign policy. They're going to be tips for people who do debate and model UN. And they're also going to create recaps of the week for our Instagram IGTV videos. So we're also working on something that we're calling our diplomacy toolbox. This is going to be a packet of resources for students in debate, model UN, or other similar activities. It's going to lay out foundational knowledge and advice to help them get started in these clubs. Our events are open to all of our teenagers, and I hope that you go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter. If you take one thing away from everything that I've said today, let it be this. Teens have incredible potential when it comes to bringing about positive change, whether that be on a small scale or for global movements. We could have taken so many different paths to get here, but the one common trait was persistence and dreaming big. And I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't been dreaming big. Thank you.
Well, Jordan, that was just excellent. As you were talking, it reminded me when I was a teenager and my professor, our teacher, was telling us that if we could harness the energy of teenagers and put them in the direction that they could organize and work hard together, they could change the world. And that's when I was a teenager. And as you were talking about it, I mean, all these years, it basically, unfortunately, not enough teenagers took that energy and drive and enthusiasm and put it into the civil workplace, into a place where they could actually change things. If they did, then we wouldn't be in the situation that we are now, with basically 5 billion people more than when I was a teenager. So congratulations. Took a long time, but you're starting.
Thank you so much.
Apurv, over to you.
That's incredible. Thanks so much, Jordan. And it's just so inspiring to hear everything that you and your group are sort of doing and how far you've come along in just 1 year, as you were telling me. It's just been 1 year and you're already sort of making such a bold impact in the world. We have a couple of questions that are coming in from the audience. So why don't we tackle them one by one, Jordan? So the first question comes from one of our sort of teenagers in Ukraine. Dr. Durbach runs a foundation, Jordan, in Ukraine, and we have a bunch of students who have joined this webinar. They ask, what qualities, skills should a teenager or a student have to become a member of your organization?
The only requirement, the only thing that we look for is passion. That's the thing that is the most important to us. It's, do you have the passion? Do you have the drive to want to affect real change? Do you get excited talking about the issues that you believe in? If you get excited about the ideas that you have, and if you get excited about the possibility of bringing change, then we want you to apply to our organization. We want you to be a part of it. So right now, applications are closed, but if you subscribe to the newsletter, we send out regular updates as to when they'll be opening next. And I believe our marketing applications might actually be open right now. And our international team is always recruiting. I can put my email address in the chat box. And if any of the people are interested in contacting me about the international team or any of the others, I'm happy to have the conversation with you guys.
Brilliant. Incredible. I hope that answers your question. This is a question coming from me, Jordan. So, you've explained to us why your focus was on foreign policy, and, you felt that a lot of teens are not involved specifically on this issue. And I can see that your organization, focuses on multiple themes, right, related to foreign policy, whether it's activism and community, whether it's economic globalization, global climate change, human rights, immigration, refugee, terrorism. Where have you seen young people most active? In which area? Can you already begin to see some hotspots? And where in the world are they coming from? Are they primarily US based or any other place in the world?
I think that when you look at everyone who's part of the organization, if you try to find one common issue that all of them are very passionate about and very invested in, it would have to be climate change. This is the one thing that unites almost everyone in the organization, is just the drive, the urgency in creating a more sustainable world. When you look at our op-ed section, I think the two categories that have the most articles are our human rights violations as well as the global issues. global issues because it's just such a wide topic. You can write about so many different things and have it be considered global issues. But if you're looking for one uniting issue, one uniting movement, it would have to be the climate change movement.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. World Information Transfer focuses on just those two issues, particularly as well, climate change and human rights. And right, Dr. Durbach, I mean, you picked out these two themes back in the day in 1980s, and it's just such a refresher to hear that it's still such a common theme amongst young people today as well. And there's so much work that needs to be done.
Yes.
Remember, our heading was Global Partners for Global Solutions from the beginning. That's how we started our UN conferences. It's just taking a very long time because unfortunately most teenagers basically have been more interested in what's the next new shoe or dress or a sneaker that they could buy rather than how to change the world. But you're absolutely right, Jordan. Young people are really getting aware of the tremendous damage that we have done to the environment. As I tell my colleagues, when you think about the millions of species that have been lost, the millions of trees that have been chopped down, all for the sake of the profit of some people, it is horrendous. It just gets me very, very upset. So I'm very glad that you're focusing on climate change, because health and environment are the most important thing for the world to be able to survive and for human species to be able to do well.
Yes.
Over to you.
Brilliant. We have another question from Vadyam. Jordan, he asks, how many years has the website been running? So if your organization is about a year old, I'm guessing the website is how many months old?
The website is actually a year and a couple of months old. From the time we had the idea to where we are now, I think it was last year in June when we started working on this. So it's about a year and a half that we've had the idea and about a year that the website has been up.
Okay, brilliant. As you were giving your talk, Jordan, I was sort of, just compartmentalizing your entire discussion. And one of the things that you mentioned was that social media, and TikTok specifically, is a great part of your outreach and recruitment as well, right? And getting people talking about these issues, raising awareness campaigns, etc. On the flip side, we've heard a different story about social media as well, that it's primarily the platform where a lot of fake news thrives. It's monetizing on a lot of attention. Young people, especially teenagers, are getting overly addicted to it. It's a platform that can really sort of radicalize them on certain issues as well. So how do you sort of circumvent some of the negative impacts that we've seen around social media with using it as a force for good?
So we're very aware that it's become a trend. Social media activism is a trend, and it can be a very toxic trend where social media users, for instance, on Instagram or Facebook, will just repost things that other people are talking about without actually researching. And we find ourselves a little bit limited because as a 501c3 based in the state of Pennsylvania, we're not allowed to promote petitions. So that's sort of where our partnerships come in. And we focus our social media. We want to create accurate news snapshots so that if teens are going to repost information, if they're going to just add things to their story, they might as well be adding real news. They might as well be adding accurate information. And so a lot of our focus is on creating that for them and just sort of combating the fake news with trying to be louder with a clearer narrative, with a more accurate narrative. Trying to outshine the fake news that is plaguing Instagram and social media and TikTok. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And it's a discussion and it's a focus that has really begun to gain a lot of attention on how social media companies are increasingly sort of, creating features across their platforms that keep people engaged and keep people, hooked on. So if you're using it to promote better, more informative educational content, then that's where young people should be focusing on. There's a comment that's come in from Mariam, and she says that she thinks that you should, and I agree, you should be a CEO of an adult organization and remind most adults about the values that you've been able to incorporate in your organization, influence and culture. So thanks for that, Mariam. Regarding your organization, to turn back, Jordan, over the past 1 year, what would you say has been, the one really successful thing that you've managed to do? Is it the number of recruitments that you've had across the teenagers, or is it the issues that they're talking about now? What in your mind has been the most successful thing that Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative has had?
I think that the most success that we've had has just been in getting more teens engaged in foreign policy and having tangible results to show this. So this is part of our recruitment, part of the content we produce. The fact is that a year ago, there were 12 people who were engaged in writing articles and creating outreach initiatives, and now there are 220 people. And so when we start to doubt ourselves, we sort of remind ourselves that even if we're not reaching anyone outside of the organization, even if we disregard any external impact we're having, within the organization itself, there are 210 more people who are now actively engaged every day, who are now more informed every day and more passionate.
Jordan, I wanted to ask you, you were mentioning that you were, when we discussed it, you were focusing on getting technology to all the many young people that don't have any instruments, capacity to be able to communicate either because of hardware, software, or basically connections. Could you tell me or tell us a little bit more about how are you trying to address this issue?
Sure. So this is something that it's in its very, very first stages right now. It's something that we've had a few conversations about when we're talking about what stands in the way of us reaching teens, what's standing in the way of them engaging with us. We are looking to partner with universities and research programs at universities, as well as any other organization who may be doing something like getting technology to underfunded areas. It's not something that we currently have the bandwidth to address personally, but it's definitely been a big topic of conversation these last couple of weeks. So I wish I had a more tangible thing to tell you and to explain to you, but the truth is that this is something that has only become an urgent issue in the last couple of weeks, and it's something that we're really engaged in finding a way to address.
Jordan, I just want to remind you what I told you. You can try focusing on US aid and see whether they can get the MIT program, who originally started with part of Negroponte, the green little computers that were sent all over to the world. You can get in touch with them and see whether they will be interested or reviving this and using the platform that you have. Because, for example, when those students that I work in Eastern Europe and Ukraine, I provide them with the computers that they may need. But, we're not talking about millions of them or thousands of them, but you may try to harness the MIT history and the US aid program in distributing stuff that may be able to be very effective.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very natural way that your organization will go into as well, given that you've discussed foreign policy issues with teens, and a majority of them, will be in parts of the world where they don't have access to TikTok or smartphones or, just the connections required to discuss things with, people in the West. So I think that's a great initiative, and definitely, you should take Dr. Dabak's advice. For anyone who's having troubles sending through questions, if you're on a laptop, the button should be right here. It would be a messaging icon that says chat. You can post your questions there. If you're joining in from a phone or an iPad, it would be 3 little dots on the right corner of your screen, where you can sort of send through questions for Jordan. Jordan, about your climate conflict diplomacy bootcamp, seasonal exhibits, and your diplomacy toolbox. These are a bunch of sort of initiatives for one organization to be tackling in one calendar year, especially when you have midterms and final exams coming right around the corner. So talk us through what are your aims with specifically these conferences and boot camps that you're planning on hosting?
Sure. So the diplomacy toolbox and our upcoming debate and our seasonal exhibits, they're sort of our initiatives that were launched in the COVID era. So these are things that we came up with once we realized that for the foreseeable future, we're not going to be able to have in-person events. We're not going to be able to physically reach teams. So we're going to have to come up with ways to do it over the internet. The Climate Summit and the Diplomacy Bootcamp are leftovers of what came before COVID and something that we just pushed over. So sometime in the next 2 years, we're hoping to make those happen. I think our main goal is just to consistently have something, always have an initiative that is thriving that teens can get involved in. So as one initiative begins to sort of taper off and end, so as our webinar series started to come to a halt, we immediately had started working on the debate series, and we're going to have that up in the next couple of weeks. So we never want to have more than a month between opportunities because we don't want to lose people's interest. So while they're engaged, let's keep them engaged. Let's give them more to do. And that's been our goal throughout the new adjustments that we've had to make to accommodate for the restrictions that are in place.
There's one more comment that I wanted to suggest to you. Jordan, teenagers, they are the most active are from the age 16 to 19. So, and this is the group that you're focusing on. But basically, they don't start leaving their ideas and their energy and the drive till they're about 23, 24. You may need to expand like we are trying to do with our former interns that we have at the UN, so that they do not feel that after they're 19, they have no place to go, and therefore their focus is going to be disintegrating. You need to think about something that basically you can expand your program, like maybe give them a title of ambassadors or whatever it is that you want to do, in order to be able to harness that energy to about 24. At that time, they are usually really pretty busy with their own lives, and you're going to lose a lot of them. But you do not need to lose the ones from 19 to 24.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Over to you, Apurv.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dr. Durbach. Jordan, I'm conscious of time, so we probably have time for just one more question. Given that we have a sizable young audience joining this webinar and who interact with our YouTube series as well, what are some personal advice that you can give us, and the young people joining? There are not a lot of people who can attach the title CEO with the title student. How have you handled all of this in a personal capacity? What fuels you further, and how do you remain on top of things? If you could shed some light on that, I think it would be very beneficial to all those listening in.
Absolutely. So one of the things that has been difficult for me personally, but has been probably the most important thing that I've learned through this process, is how to draw the boundaries between work Jordan and person Jordan outside of work. And so at first I was the CEO that was always on Slack. I would answer messages within 5 minutes. I would do things in the middle of dinner. I would get up and I would go and I would finish something up if it wasn't done and someone needed it. And then I realized that, this is starting to take over my life. My identity is starting to become FPYC. And that's not fair to me. That's not fair to my education. And so one of the most important things and one of the best things that I did for myself was learn how to turn off my phone, how to put it on mute and put it away from myself where I just couldn't access FPYC. And it took some forced separation where I would tell my parents, take my phone, do not give it to me. For the next 48 hours, don't give me my phone, no matter what I say, no matter what I ask. And so that way I accustomed myself to being away from the organization so that I could invest time in my personal life. Another big thing that I learned is that passion can only go so far. When we're looking to recruit new people, we look for passion, and that's because we have the tools in place to take them further. It doesn't necessarily need to be something that they individually are able to do, because we help them a lot through the process, we guide them. But if you are an individual or a group of individuals who is just looking to start something, it's not enough to just be passionate about it. You have to have initiative. You have to be willing to take action and take difficult actions to address those issues. You can't just say, oh, I care about this issue so much. I care about the environment so much. I wish that everything was better. You have to stop and you have to take real actions, tangible actions, in order to actually make a difference. And so that's another thing that I'm very passionate about, the power of initiative, and not just sitting back and caring. You have to do something about it. You have to go out and do something. And then I think the last thing is just to dream big. If I hadn't been dreaming big, I wouldn't be here. If I hadn't had myself and the others who were alongside me, if we hadn't put together this big vision of something that everyone else told us that this is unattainable, it's unrealistic. They said everyone starts organizations for their college applications. They're going to think that you're just one of those people. And if we had listened, if we had stopped dreaming big, we would never have gotten to where we are today. And so you have to tune out those negative voices, and you have to focus on yourself and your passion and your beliefs.
There's, as you were talking, it reminded me, we had a couple of presenters at our virtual voices who are heads of departments at the United Nations. And one of the things that they mentioned, which you just reminded me of, that it is important when you talk with people or with teenage to have them pick one area of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that they want to focus on. They could focus on health, they could focus on climate change, they could focus on basically cleaning the ocean or saving species, etc., etc. But it is very important that they have one thing that they are really extremely passionate about, and then they can be passionate about other things. But otherwise, their mind gets disoriented, and you cannot, as you say, you cannot take care of a dozen things all at once. It just doesn't work.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Jordan. Just we have a minute, but we have a bunch of students and teenagers joining in from Ukraine with this webinar. What can they do after this webinar to stay in touch with your organization, to potentially write for Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative? Can we send them sort of your publication? How do they join your newsletter? What could be the next steps?
So the next steps, it depends on how much commitment you have to FPYC, what level of engagement you want to have. If you just want a way to stay informed and every once in a while write about something that interests you, that would be subscribing to our newsletter. It's on our website, fpyouthcollab.org. I can add it to the chat afterwards. And the subscribing to our newsletter on our website. And that way you just keep getting updates. You keep getting a reminder to go and check out what do teens care about, to go read more articles. If you want to be a part of our team, if you want to be someone who's consistently producing content, if you email me, I can connect you with our international director. And our international team is in its very beginning stages. And so we're looking to grow that team by a lot. And I can connect you with her, and she can get you guys into the team, and she can get you guys started on making a difference.
That's excellent. Well, Jordan, thank you very, very much. It was really an interesting and of course for me, it brought in a lot of memories, an enlightening presentation. So I'm very glad that you were able to come here and talk to us, and hopefully we'll see you again in the near future. You can give us an update. Apurv, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jordan. Again, just echoing what Dr. Durbach said, it's been an absolutely privilege to speak with you, learn from your story, and just, feel your passion and energy about some of these issues and inspire everyone else as well. Thank you for taking out the time and joining World Information Transfer's Virtual Voices series. For everyone, we have a similar theme running next week as well. We have another youth takeover taking place. We have all our former interns from World Information Transfer and the United Nations joining us next Wednesday for a catch up on, where we've come to in life now, the things that we learned through our internship, and definitely join in there. And Jordan, you very well are invited also, and everyone from Foreign Policy Youth Collaborative. The week after that, we have Dr. Ruth Etzel and Dr. Sophie Bulk, who are going to be talking about their book on protecting your child's health, expert answers to urgent environmental questions. So stay tuned, stay informed, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jordan.